Okay, pre-cal, in this video we're going to learn how to evaluate piecewise functions and determine their function values. So what does that look like? Well, just like we've evaluated functions in other units or other sections of our notes, we're going to look at finding the y value given the x value. So it's the same evaluating we did earlier in Unit 1. All right, so having said that, all you really have to do is pay attention to your restriction because you want to evaluate using the equation that contains the x value you're given. So essentially what you want to do is you want to look at your restriction based on this value. So when I look at f of 0, that means when x equals 0, what's y? So that's the question I'm asking. Well, I've got 3 choices here. I can't plug it into all of them, so I've got to figure out which one it goes with. All right, so notice that this restriction right here, this first one for this line, is that x is less than or equal to 0 and greater than -3. The next one says x is less than or equal to -3, and this one states that x is just greater than 0. So the one we're interested in using is going to be this line right here because the less than or equal to implies that 0 is part of this function. That means we're going to use x plus 2 to find f of 0. So we're going to use f of x equals x plus 2 to evaluate this. So I'm going to simply write f of 0 equals 0 plus 2 because anywhere the x is, I plug in the 0, and that's 2. That is my answer. All right, now let's look at the next problem. Now I want to know what f of -1 is. Well, let's look at these again. This restriction right here, x is greater than 0. Well, -1's not greater than 0, so it's not going to be that function. My next one is x less than or equal to -3. Well, -1 is bigger than -3. It's closer to 0. That's not going to work. So let's look at this one, the same one we used last time. X less than or equal to 0, but greater than -3. Well, since -1 fits between -3 and 0, it fits into that domain restriction. So again, I'm going to use f of x equals x plus 2, and I'm going to find -1. I'm going to find what y is when x is -1, and it's going to be just 1. Very good. See, this is easy. All right, the next one asks us, what is f of -5? Guess what I'm going to do? The exact same thing I did already. All right, so if you will notice, -5, let's see where it fits. It doesn't fit in between 0 and -3 because it's less than -3. But it does fit this right here, x less than or equal to -3. -5 is less than that, so that's the one we're going to use. So for this one, I'm going to use f of x equals x plus 3 squared. So f of -5, pay attention to your parentheses here or you won't get the right answer. So -5 plus 3 is -2. -2 squared is +4. See, we're doing so good. All right, so here's our last one on this problem, f of 2. So I'm going to look in my restrictions. My very first one, 2 is not in between -3 and 0. It's bigger than 0, so that doesn't fit that function. So the next one, x less than or equal to -3, well, 2's bigger than -3. That's not going to work. So now that leaves us with our last one, x greater than 0. Well, is 2 greater than 0? Yes, it is. So we are going to use f of x equals x squared minus 2. So in doing that, just going to substitute it in. And I get 2. Awesome. It's just that simple. It really, really is. And if you get confused with your restrictions, if you will picture the number line, it will make it so much easier. Like if you're looking at this, because I know it gets confusing when you're talking about negatives, and it's hard to kind of in your brain think about how -4 is smaller than -3, but you can tell on the number line because it's to the left of -3. So having a number line might help you. Okay, so we're going to do number 7. I'm going to go through it a little bit quicker just because we've already done one of these. All right, the very first one is f of 8. So I'm going to look at all my restrictions. Okay, my very first restriction, x is greater than or equal to -7 and less than -3. Well, 8 is above all of those values, so it's not that one. Okay, let's look at the next one. For this one, x is between -2 and 2. Well, 8's bigger than 2, so that doesn't work. Okay, this last one, x is greater than 2 and less than 7. Well, if it's less than 7, 8 doesn't work. What's our answer, Miss Griggs? Does not exist for this function, okay? X, the value of 8 for x does not exist in this function. All right, so let's look at the next one. I've got f of -2. Well, you probably already recognize that this middle one right here fits that because it clearly states that x is greater than or equal to -2. So I'm going to use f of x equals x squared. And that equals 4. All right, the next one, f of 3. Well, in this doesn't work because those are all negative values. This one doesn't work because 2 is less than 3 and it's not included in there. So that leaves us with this one. Does 3 fit in between 2 and 7? Yes, it does. All right, so what's my answer? Look at this. It's 5, right? If we're using f of x equals 5, since there's no x there, guess what? F of 3 is equal to 5. But Miss Griggs, how can that be? Because it's a horizontal line. That means for every value of x, it's 5 for y. Okay, let's look at our last one, f of 0. Well, the only value where 0 fits is this one right here in the middle, okay? Because this value for 5, f of x equals 5, those values are both positive, and 0 doesn't fit in there. For this one up here, they're both negative, 0 doesn't fit in there, but it does fit in this restriction right here. So I'm going to use f of x equals x squared, and I'm going to substitute in a 0. Guess what that is? Just 0. Okay, there you go. The next video, we will learn how to write equations from graphs.